President Trump's trade chief is on Capitol Hill today defending the president's sweeping tariffs policy. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer is testifying before the Senate Finance Committee. He says the U.S. is already benefiting from President Trump's tariff policy. Here's some of what we've heard so far.
How can you commit that negotiations are not just going to stop bleeding, but are actually going to open up markets that the Trump tariffs have closed off?
So, Senator, we've already had many countries, many of our markets, explain that they are not going to retaliate against the United States. And in fact, Vietnam, for example, they've lowered their tariffs already on cherries. They've lowered them on almonds and apples, things I know are important to the Pacific Northwest. And this is exactly the right direction that we want to go in. I look forward to hearing from you what other kind of market access you want as we enter into these negotiations.
What's the status of China? As you know, that's a big market for us in the Pacific Northwest. What's the status of discussions there? I don't see much progress. What I see is it looks like it's going to escalate and escalate some more and hurt our consumers and our small businesses in our part of the world.
Well, Senator, unfortunately, China for many years seems to be choosing its own path on market access. Again, they have agency in this. They elected to announce retaliation.
All right, let's get to CBS News congressional correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns. Caitlin, what else have you heard from the president's trade chief today?
Well, Mugo, as you can imagine, lawmakers up here on Capitol Hill from both sides of the aisle are very eager to hear about the president's plans, the administration's plans, because they're watching the markets too, and they're hearing from their constituents too, concerned about the volatility that we've been seeing and what it means for their bottom line if prices do increase on everyday goods. The bottom line coming from the trade rep here is a defense of the president's policies, as you can imagine, but with a particular focus on trying to squeeze China. He also mentioned that he has been a point person here with world leaders calling into the White House trying to work out negotiating deals. He says that he's heard personally from 50 countries wanting to see how they can work out some kind of negotiation here. And that's important because there's been some mixed messaging coming from the White House on this tariff policy, whether it is in fact set in stone going forward. Tomorrow, remember, the bigger reciprocal tariffs are slated to take effect. But you're also hearing from some administration officials that this is a negotiating tactic, that it's bringing people to the room to be able to negotiate a better deal. The trade rep also mentioned that the tariffs that are supposed to go into effect tomorrow are still planned to go into effect tomorrow. And that raises even bigger questions about what this means, because Saturday we saw that baseline tariff implemented. We saw how the markets reacted last week and early this week. Tomorrow, with those even bigger tariffs coming into place, all eyes are going to be on how the market reacts to that.
And I know you are there right now and there's so much going on, but have you heard reaction from senators? What are they saying?
There are some mixed feelings up here on Capitol Hill. You do have a group of Republican lawmakers who are gung-ho about the president's policies, who are arguing that the president was elected, that he's been talking about tariffs for nearly 40 years now, and that this was to be expected, and a little market volatility is potentially just that. But you also have a group of lawmakers here who are raising alarm bells, which is significant. I mean, we also heard from Senator Kennedy, not HHS Secretary Kennedy of Louisiana, a staunch Republican, an ally of the president, saying that the president now owns this economy because this is now self-inflicted. And so whether it's good, whether it's bad, this is President Trump's economy, and you can't blame it on previous administrations. So that's a big, bet for Republicans up here on Capitol Hill heading into a midterm election next year. Remember, their margins up here are very narrow. If the economy continues to go the way it's going, they could face backlash for that. And it's also important to remember that Congress has jurisdiction over trade and tariffs. But over the years, they've ceded that authority to the executive. You do have some interest up here on Capitol Hill about trying to claw back that authority. There's some legislation, but it hasn't reached a critical mass, at least among Republicans.
Okay. Caitlin, I want to ask you something else that has nothing to do with tariffs, and that is the senators, we know they passed a budget resolution, and it is critical to implementing the president's agenda. Any indication that House Republicans will also rally around it? I know a few of them right now are saying they're against this.
Yeah, this is also a big question here. And remember, this is just the framework to be able to then start writing policy. So anything that gets passed eventually on this isn't actual law. They still have to fill it out with policy, but they want to fill it out with the president's agenda. You do have some very reluctant Republicans on the House side who aren't wanting to support the Senate's version of this. They are actually going to go to the White House. They've been invited to the White House this afternoon to meet with the president, and he's going to try to kind of whip them into shape, to use their vernacular. And we'll see what happens there. I mean, the president has been very active in these negotiations because it involves his agenda. There's a lot he can do through his executive order, but extending the Trump tax cuts, for example, issuing new tax incentives and new tax cuts also fall under the purview of Congress. Only they can implement that into law. So the president's very interested in having this pass and be able to move forward. But still outstanding questions there. And just to tie it back to what we're seeing with the markets and trade, you've seen this argument about the need for stability here. And some Republicans who have been supportive of this budget framework say their argument is that this will enable some more stability, or at least be able to inject it into the conversation. So we'll see what happens. We always say stay tuned, but you still have that, typical holdout, but leaders up here have been reminding us that we've been here time and time again. They eventually get this done. So we'll see. If I'm a betting person, I'm not making any bets.
All right. Okay. Got it, Caitlin. Thank you so much for joining us on the stream today. Appreciate it. We'll see what happens, indeed.